the idea of women and the obligation of women to daven, to pray, specifically the Shachars, Mincha, and Maariv, the three davenings, the three tefillahs that a person has to pray every day, and if there's any differences between them, etc., and what is the obligations. This is connected specifically to the Parsha that talks about that Vayetze, Yaakov Beersheva, that Yaakov left Beersheva, Vivka B'Makom, and he encountered the place. Ein Pega Lash Tefilah. The Pega means that he encountered, he had a real encounter. An encounter is a Tefilah davening. And what davening was that? That was the davening of Maariv, Kiva Shemesh, because the sun set, and that represents the evening prayer, the evening Maariv, the evening prayer. So there's a Mishnah. The Mishnah in Bracha says like this. The Mishnah in Daf Chaf says like this. Nashim va'avadim, that women, afupi, even though they're pater, mekriya shma, they're pater they're exempt from reading the Shema because it says man grama. It's time bound. And tefillin, for example, chayavim, they're obligated b'tefillah, b'mezuzah, b'krishma, they're obligated to daven. There's a mitzvah for nashim, for women also to daven. The Gemara continues. So this is what it says in the Mishnah. Says the Gemara. So the Gemara says that the reason is because derachem eninum. That since davening is a request, a reaching out for compassion, so this is something that's applicable to all people, all men and women, and therefore women are also obligated to daven. And the Gemara says like this: you would think, since it says in the pasuk, since the pasuk says in Tilum Nun Hey, since the pasuk says in the morning, the evening, and in the morning, afternoon, and evening, I will beseech you, and I will speak to you, and Hashem will hear my prayers, Hashem will hear my voice. You would think that women were not obligated. Kamash Malon comes to tell us, no, that women are obligated. That's what the Mishnah is telling us, that a woman is also obligated to daven. What's the haven? Why would you think that a woman would be pater, exempt from tefillah? So the simple reason is because you would think that it's a mitzvah, say, shahazman grama, that it's a mitzvah that is time bound. Whether it's a mitzvah midaraisa, midarabanan, whether it's a biblical mitzvah or from the sages, but the concept is that you would think that it's a mitzvah shahazman grama, that it's time bound. So Rabbeinu Yonah on the Rif, Rabbeinu Yonah on the Rif Taf Yud Aleph on the base, Rabbeinu Yonah writes, Talmid Rabbeinu Yonah writes, that you would think that it's a zman grama because it has specific times. You're supposed to daven in the morning, and there's a zman tefilah for the morning, there's a zman tefilah for the afternoon, and there's a zman tefilah for the evening. There's a particular time alluded space that we're supposed to daven. You would think that women are not obligated to do that because of that reason. So Rabbeinu Yonah says, because principally, since the Gemara says that if only a person will daven the entire day, which means that the idea of tefillah really is to reach out, to seek, to connect, to be attached to and in the presence of Hashem at all moments of the day. So since that really should be this state, vanit a person should be in a state of davening at all moments. So therefore, it is ki'ilu, it is as if it's not zman grama, time bound. And when it says that you should daven shachars, mincha, and ma'ariv, that you should daven these specific times in the morning, evening, afternoon, that's like the minimum requirement of davening. This is the way Rabbeinu Yonah phrases it. In other words, even though it's mitzvah shazman grama, it's time bound. It has a specific time in the morning, a specific time in the afternoon, a specific time in the evening. However, that's not the maximum requirement, but it's the minimum requirement. So in essence of the davening is shelo yazman grama. It's not time bound, or it's considered like not time bound. This is really, this shita, this opinion is closer to Rashi and to Tosfos. That the opinion of Rashi and Tosfos is, Rashi is not so much about the idea of time bound. Tosfos explains that, in essence, Tefilah, the idea of davening, is midarabanan. Is only from the sages. It was created through the Anshe Knesset Agdala, that the obligation of davening, the חיוב of davening, the obligation of davening every day, is midarabanan. And the Rabbanon also established the nusach Tefilah, the particular liturgy of the davening, and they established the particular liturgy and the specific times that a person should daven, Shachar and Mincha, which is a chayva, which is an obligation, and the evening, which is only a rishus. We'll speak about this in a moment. So Tosfos says that even though it's a mitzvah say midivr soifim shazman grama, even though it's a mitzvah say midarabanan from a sages that is time bound. However, and generally women are exempt from mitzvah say shazman grama, even the rabbanan. That's shittas Tosfos, not just Rashi. The opinion of Tosfos, not Rashi. For example, like halal and kiddush. Still, since it's bakashas rachamim, since it's the idea of davening is bakashas rachamim, is requests for compassion, for divine compassion. So therefore, women are also obligated. In other words, even though it's mitzvah say shazman grama midarabanan, even though it's mitzvah say it's time bound according to the sages, still, a woman is obligated to do it, and do it twice, Shachar and Mincha. We'll talk about Maariv for a moment, because since the Chazal, the sages implemented the idea of davening every single day in a particular way, and to do this 3 times a day or twice a day, therefore the women's obligation is also, even though it's man grama, it's technically, it's time bound, here's an exception to the rule, where even though it's time bound and it's a mitzvah system with it's still a woman is obligated because it's bakashas rachman. That's one way to understand it. This is the shitta of some of the Rishonim. The other opinion is, which is the main opinion, is the opinion of the Rambam. And this, if you look in the Alter Rebbe, in Simon Kuvav, Simon Beis, Siv Beis, the Alter Rebbe writes this very clearly, that the Rambam's opinion is that there's a mitzvah min ha-Torah to daven every day. The pasuk says l'avdei, ezav vayishem alev zu Tefilah. That's the pasuk says that verse says that the pasuk says that a person should serve Hashem. What is the service of Hashem? The Gemara says, and this is Sifra, and there's other midrashim that say this. The Gemara says, at the beginning of Tainus, this means Tefilah, davening. So therefore, according to the Rambam, there's a mitzvah says min ha-Torah to daven. So according to the Rambam, it's a mitzvah says min ha-Torah sheloi hazman grama. And that's why women are obligated. In other words, since min ha-Torah, a person has to daven every day, it's not time bound, it doesn't have a specific time. According to the other opinion, that's midarabanan, it's only from the sages, it does have a time. There's a specific time that you have to daven shachris, and a specific time you have to daven mincha. There's a morning davening, and an evening davening, an afternoon davening. According to the Rambam, a person has to daven once a day. That's not zman grama, that's not time bound, that's every single time. It's only midarabanan, the sages came along, midivr soifim, and said you have to daven shachar and mincha. You have to daven one davening in the morning, one davening in the afternoon, and one davening in the evening. So iker mitzvah tefilah hu min ha-Torah. The iker mitzvah tefilah, the main idea of tefilah is min ha-Torah. As it said, love them chalavavchem, ezav vaydish ulev zu tefilah. And therefore, a woman is also obligated because it's shaloi hazman grama. It's not time bound. And what does a woman have to daven? Once a day, she has to daven. A woman has to she can daven any type of nusach, any type of liturgy, and any time throughout the day. And when she does this by night or by day, once throughout the 24-hour time period, she's Vayetze the mitzvah. Okay, so here we have a big machlokes, a big argument between the Rishonim. If you say that Tefilah is zman grama or not zman grama, according to the Rambam, it's min ha-Torah. Tefilah is min ha-Torah, but it's not zman grama, min ha-Torah. It's not time bound because you always have to daven every day. According to Tosfos, the main opinion of Tosfos and Rashi is that it is time bound because it's only a mitzvah essay midrabanan from the sages. It's an obligation of the sages. The sages l'chatchila implemented that you have to daven shachar, mincha, and Maariv, and therefore it's time bound. And the reason why a woman has to daven is because of rachaminu. Even though it's time bound, it's rachaminu. But according to Rambam, the reason why a woman has to daven is because rachaminu. And it's not. I'm sorry, it's not because rachaminu, because it's Shalei Zman Garma. It's not Zman Garma. How about Maariv? So Maariv, the evening davening. How about does a woman is obligated to daven Maariv? So Maariv, lechatchil, the Gemara says there's machlokes, but the machlokes in the Tanaim that we paskin that Tefilas Arvis is rishus. The idea of Tefilas Arvis, the idea of davening Maariv, is rishus. Rishus means it's not an obligation. It's if you will, you should daven, you could daven. It's not obligatory. That it's rishus. It's interesting that more Pnimius, the reason has to do with that Yaakov, when he stood up to daven v'yifk b'makom, he stood up to daven mincha. Kiva Hashemesh, the sun set earlier. So if the sun set earlier, really his intention was mincha. So therefore it becomes only rishus. It's only the idea of rishus, or that's some of the reasons why, according to Yehudi, you can have Maariv earlier. Whatever, but there's something to do with this idea, more of a pnimius, more an internal, a deeper reason. But the Gemara says that now we accept it upon ourselves to daven Maariv as a chayv, as an obligation, not just a rishus. And how about women? So this is what Alter Rebbe writes. Alter Rebbe writes in Simon Kufav, that men accepted upon themselves to daven Maariv, to chiv to daven Maariv, and they daven Maariv. Women did not accept upon themselves to daven Maariv, and therefore most women do not daven Maariv. What does it mean? First of all, what does it mean that there was a Kabbalah, that there was acceptance upon ourselves, that even though minadin, according to the din, strict law, it's rishus, there was an accepted upon ourselves that we accepted that as a chayva. So this is actually also a machlokes or a shaynim. This is a machlokes or a shaynim. What's the machlokes? The machlokes is whether this how do we accept it? So the Rosh in Perek Dalet Simon Beis Rabbeinu Yoina, also in Daf Yud Ches on the Rif, when it speaks about that Hadar Kiblu l'chayv, that we accept it upon ourselves as a chayv, in brachas is all in brachas. So they write that it was a Kabbalah pratis, that since the individual accept upon himself to daven Maariv, that he davens Maariv every day, therefore becomes a chayva. However, the Rambam writes different. The Rambam in Hilchos Tefillah Perek Aleph Halacha 1:6 writes, "Nogu kol Yisrael b'chol makomis mishaseim." There is a custom amongst all of Kol Yisrael, and we're all there in all their dwellings. Leispalal arvis, to daven Maariv, v'kiblu aleim ketfilas chayva, and they accepted upon themselves as a chayv, as they collectively accepted upon themselves that it was a chayv. Tosis also in Yumad Beis Zayin, Amud Beis also writes the same thing, the same idea, that Kabbalah is a klolis, that there's a Kabbalah klolis, a general acceptance. Tosis Chagiga Daf Tes Amud Beis brings down these two ideas, whether it's Kabbalah Pratius, a specific Kabbalah they accepted, or is a Kabbalah klolis. But this idea of Kabbalah klolis means that there was a general acceptance upon themselves to daven Maariv. So the question is, if there was a Kabbalah of Klal Yisrael, that the Klal Yisrael collectively accepted upon themselves to daven Maariv, why was that not accepted? The question is twofold. Why was that not accepted by women? And what does it mean that women didn't accept upon themselves to daven Maariv? There was a specific intention that they're not accepting upon themselves, and if there's a Klal accepting upon themselves to daven Maariv, so maybe a woman should also daven Maariv. Halacha, just like it became as a rishus then, and then it became a chayv today. So maybe there's a Kabbalah of Klal Yisrael. So if the Kabbalah of Klal Yisrael, the woman should be obligated to also daven Maariv. But again, this is only according to the shitta of the Ramban and Toises and Rashi that Tefilah is B'Darbanon, and even though it's a Zman Grama, Rachamim, so they have to daven these 3 davenings, 2 davenings at least. So why not daven the third? According to Rashi, according to the Rambam, it's simple because they only have to daven once a day, and it's not really relevant how they daven and what language they daven. So this one sounds at least a little bit more ba'omek. What is actually this machlokes, and what does this mean that women do not accept upon themselves to daven Maariv? What does that mean? So within the same conversation, there is a question with regards to Musaf. So Musaf is the extra davening Musaf literally means extra, added. It's the extra davening that we daven on Shabbos, or Chodesh, on Yom Tov. So the question is, are women obligated? This is the question of a חיוב. Is women obligated to daven Musaf? So there's a Toises in Brachas Chavav Amud Aleph, where Toises speaks about that the Gemara talks over there that Tefilas Musaf Ein Lo Tashlumim, that there's no making up for the Tefilas Musaf. And Toises says because the idea of Musaf is specifically connected to the Karban Musaf, to the offering of the Musaf that was brought in the times of the Beis HaMikdash, the Karban Musaf. And principally, the concept with Karbanos is, with offerings in general, is Avars Mana Batal Karbane. Once there's a certain time that you have to bring this Karban Musaf, this offering of the Musaf, and once it's over that time period, you can't bring it again, the Musaf Karban. And since our davening of Musaf is principally from the idea of an Neshamas Faras Hosenu, that our lips come in the place of the Karbanos, specifically with regards to Musaf, because with regards to other tefillas, with Shachar, Mincha, Maariv, it's Rachamim. It's requests for compassion. It's beseeching Hashem for health, for wealth, for whatever we're beseeching Hashem for, or for connectivity. But that's the idea of Rachamim, of compassion. So, but Musaf is specifically in the place of the Karban, the place of the offering. Says the Tzlach. So the tzlach over there on Daf Chavav, the tzlach brings down. The tzlach is the Noida B'Yehuda, So he says that according to this Tosfos, and according to his girsa, his version of the Tosfos, it's Musaf would be a mitzvah midrabanan shazman grama. That would be a time-bound mitzvah. Remember, the only reason why we daven midrabanan is even though it's time-bound, but rachamim. It's because it's for the purpose of compassion. So therefore, even according to the opinion that says that davening is only midrabanan, still the woman has to daven shachar mincha, maybe Maariv, because rachamim, because it's compassion. Because the idea of davening is to seek compassion. But if the idea of not seeking compassion, then it would just be a mitzvah shazman gram, it would be time bound, and then a woman would not be obligated; she'd be exempt from davening. So by Musaf, that exemption applies because it's not rachamim. It's not for the purpose of compassion. It's the purpose of the shalom farms v'seinu. So therefore, it's a mitzvah shasman grama. It's time bound, and therefore a woman is pater from davening musaf. Yeah, the Mishnah Berurah in Siman Kuvav brings down this slach and says yesh cholkim olav, and there's some that argue with this slach. And the woman should have musaf. There's a Rekiva Eger in the Tshuvas and Siman Tes, but there's also a Rekiva Eger and Golas Rekiva Eger in Siman Kuvav. The Rekiva Eger brings down that B'Tshuvas, it's this Kuvav Aleph, B'Tshuvas Psamim Rosh, Siman Pesach, brings down from a Tshuva. A response from a Shilas HaTshuvas is called Psamim Rosh, which we'll talk about in a moment. What's this Shilas HaTshuvas? What is this? Which sefer is this? Which book is this? The Noshim Beturis Mitfilas Musafim. The Eina Ba El Lezecha Chiyav Karbanis. The Isha Lo Yis Shekelas. And a woman did not bring a machsa shekel. Ve'en Lechele Karbanis Sibur. So the Psamim Rosh, he brings down the Psamim Rosh that the reason women are not obligated to daven musaf is because it's connected to the machzah shekel, the shkalim, the machzah shekel, the monies that were offered, that were brought, was an obligation for men to bring. And from those monies, we brought the sibur, the offerings, the general offerings that were offered. For example, the korban hamusafim, the korban musaf. So therefore, since women are not obligated to bring a machzah shekel, they're not obligated to bring the shkalim, they're not obligated to donate to the Beis Hamikdash for the korbanos, for the purpose of offerings. So therefore, they don't have a part of that korban, of that offering. So therefore, women are exempt from this, from davening musaf. This is what the Psalm Rosh brings down. This is the Rebbe Akiva brings up from Psalm Rosh. But he continues and says, Avakar nagul ispalel kol davar v'chiv atzim b'chol mitzvahs. But they're already, this is part of the Psalm Rosh, but they already accept upon themselves. And then he brings up B'chedush Tzlach. He brings down this slach. The nashim tur mit filos musim mit tam dav mitzvah angrava. Then he brings down this svar, the slach, the reason of the slach, that women are not obligated to bring to offer to daven musaf because it's zman grama. Because it's korban musaf. Korban musaf is a musaf that's brought on a particular time, and it's not rachamin, it's not for the person of compassion. It's therefore it's zman grama. But the other reason that he brings down from Psalm Rosh has to do with machzah shekel. This has to do with machzah shekel. Since women are not obligated to bring machzah shekel, so therefore they're not obligated to do this. This is this Psalm Rosh is there's a lot of conversation among the poskim about this Rebbe Akiva Eiger. For example, Yitzchak Chanan brings down in Ber Yitzchak Simantes, I think. He brings down that if this is true, that anyone that's not mechuyev a machzah shekel, a person that's not obligated to bring a machzah shekel, the shekel is also exempt, is potter from musaf, then how about a kohen and a levi? A kohen and a levi, the Mishnah in Shkalim, there's a machlokes whether they have to bring, or if they could bring. It's better if they bring. They don't bring, but according to certain opinions, they don't have to bring. So maybe a kohen and levi would not have to daven musaf. And that's impossible because the Gemara says in Sukkot and Gimel, the Gemara says that there was a Levi that davened Musaf, and other questions like that. Also, there's a big chiddush to say that Levim and Kohanim don't have to daven Musaf. Also, there's an opinion about Shkalim. Another question is that Shkalim is Zman HaMishkan, it was from 20 years old. That question is, does that apply also Bizman Shmeis HaMikdash when they came into Eretz Yisrael, or that starts from 13 years old? There's some opinion in the Rishayim that it starts from 20, so that would mean that anyone under 20, even male, doesn't have to daven Musaf because anyways, a lot of tzarachiyans on this Psalm Rosh. It's interesting, but there's also the tzlach, which says Zman Grama, which is the idea of the Zman Grama. So the question is, could a woman daven? What would be the issue? The issue would be there's a famous machlokes between the Rambam and Rabbeinu Tam, which essentially is machlokes between the Sfardim and Ashkenazim. If there's a mitzvah seishas man grama, putting aside the Psalm Rosh for a second, if there's a mitzvah seishas man grama, mitzvah say even with the Rabbanan, shas man grama, that's time bound. Could a woman perform it, and could a woman perform it with making a bracha? That's really the question. Rabbeinu Tam is matir. Rabbeinu Tam says that a woman could. She can take a lulav and aser, whatever, and make a bracha, and it's not a problem. It's not a bracha l'vatala. It's not an empty bracha, a bracha in vain. However, the Rambam doesn't paskin like that. So the question is that she cannot make a bracha. So the question is, if she decides to daven musaf, would that be appropriate, according to the opinion of the tzlach that she's exempt from it because it's man grama? So the Kaf HaChaim in Orach Chaim Reish Pei Zayin, Reish Pei Vav Siman Zayin writes, which Kaf HaChaim is a pasuk, a Svardish pasuk, a big Svardish pasuk, allows it. Says that she may do this. But it's interesting that Rebbe Vadia in Yabi Oimer Chelik Gimel Orach Chaim Siman Vav and Chelik Tes Orach Chaim Siman Kuf Ches, Rebbe Vadia actually says that it's better maybe that a woman should not daven musaf, should maybe hear musaf davening from someone else, because it could be a possible bracha levatala, according to this idea of the tzlach. But in general, this shitta is this shitta of the tzlach, this opinion of the tzlach. The Ramshik holds up this opinion also of the Psalm Rosh, but in general, it's not an accepted view. And it's also the Rabbi Akiva writes that women do daven. But the truth is there's a bigger conversation, which is, what's the sefer Psalm Rosh? Who's the sefer? What's the sefer? So Psalm Rosh is attributed to Rosh represents Rabbeinu Asher. That Psalm Rosh is the Psalm is the Mount of Shuvas. Psalm Rosh was a published text by a maskil called Shalom of Berlin. He was obviously a big Talmud Chacham, but also a maskil, more modern, and he printed the sefer, saying that this is an unpublished manuscript of the tshuvas of these tshuvas, and this is an authentic text, not the Rosh. Whether it was an authentic text. So from Rabbi Akiva, it seems that he accepts the Psalm Rosh as an authentic text. But others in Sefer Abris, from Leola Vilna and others, write that it's from a maskil, and you can see there are certain things that are written there. Like, for example, there's this tremendous leniency that he says about kitnius, that kitnius, you should allow kitnius on Pesach, which is not such a good raya because the Yavitz also says the same thing, the Chuvas Yavitz. But there's some complications with this text. So we're not really sure exactly what this machlokes is exactly. The Chida also says that it's correct text, that it's an authentic text. It's unclear. Some say that it's a mix. There could be some tshuvas that it's original, and some tshuvas that this Shaul Berlin wrote. There's an opinion in Rabbi Akiva. This is Rabbi Akiva tells Rashbi in Pesachim Kufiyud Beis. The Gemara says that Rashbi told Itala B'Ilum Gadol, and Rashi says that sometimes you can write a sefer and you can be Itala B'Ilum Gadol. You can tie yourself to something or say an opinion that's actually something that's said by great people from the past, which in medieval times this is very popular to do. People publish svarim saying that these books are attributed to sages from the times past. It's possible you're allowed to do that. It's not considered a forgery. Anyways, that's a side point. Either way, we have this opinion of Rabbi Akiva, which he brings down from the Psalm Rosh, and we have the opinion of the Tzlach. But generally, the consensus is that a woman could daven. Now let's get back to Maariv. Let's get back to Maariv and to understand why women are not, if there was an acceptance of Klal Yisrael, that there was an acceptance of Klal Yisrael to accept Maariv not as Rishus as a Chayva. So why don't women daven Maariv? Why does Alter Rebbe paskin that, and that's the way it's practiced, that women don't daven Maariv? Why not? So the truth is, we can think about this in an interesting way. Think about this in terms of the shit of the Rambam, not the Ramban, which is a mitzvah to daven every single day. And the question is, the pasuk says, "U'la'avdei b'chalavavchem," u'la'avdei, which means you should serve Hashem. You should serve. Chazal say this, sages say upon this, that what does it mean to serve? It means to daven. But the question is, how do you know you have to daven every day? The Rambam writes, mitzvah says minatoyer, lispalo b'chol yom. The mitzvah says minatoyer to daven every single day because it says love day. It says you have to serve. But the pasuk doesn't say love day b'chol yom. It doesn't say you should serve Hashem every single day. It says love day, you should serve. Maybe it's a mitzvah that a person has to do once in their life. Love day. If it's Tefilah, and love day specifically the idea of Tefilah, maybe it's a Tefilah. Maybe this means that once in a person's life they have to daven. Where do we see that it has to daven every single day? Where does it say in the pasuk, in the verse, that the Torah says, yes, it's a mitzvah Torah to daven, but who said every single day? This is a question to think about in terms of the Rambam. You have a similar conversation happens with the idea of with the idea of tefillin. it's a very extreme opinion, but if there's a brisker opinion that says that it's not Halacha, but that the Torah doesn't say you have to put on tefillin every day. The Torah says you have to put on ois when it should be a time of the ois. When is the time of an ois of the sign? Between one ois and others, because since Shabbos is an ois, and every Shabbos is an ois, so between Shabbos and Shabbos you put on tefillin. So maybe it's possible, again, not Halacha, not according to practice, that if a person has an opportunity to put on tefillin on Sunday for 6 hours versus putting Sunday, Monday, Tuesday an hour each day, then it would be better to put on 6 hours on Sunday than Sunday, Monday, Tuesday each day, according to this radical understanding of it. But this is really boimik. You have to really think about this in terms of tefillah as well, not tefillin, of davening. Where does it say? L'avdei, it says you should serve Hashem. So how do you know you have to serve Hashem every day? That the mitzvah tefillah is every day. So there's a Pri Chadash that brings down in Simon Pei Tes that brings down from the Kirei Sefer. But he brings down. Where does it say that you should daven every single day? And it just says you should serve Hashem with all your heart. Maybe it's a mitzvah tmidias. Maybe it's a constant mitzvah that you always have to daven. Or maybe you have to daven once in your lifetime. But where does it say you have to daven every single day? El dahacha, the Baha'i kalamemer, the Torah leba listen lefarsh. V'kiven loy pirish, sasek pirish davu chol yom. So the first answer he brings down is that the Torah is not going to leave this very obscure statement hanging. It says you should serve Hashem. It doesn't say when. So since it doesn't say when, loy ba listem el lefarsh, the Torah is not telling you something that's sasum, but something that's trying to clarify, and then it's clarifying it. So therefore, what it's saying is that you should daven every single day. That would be the simple explanation, because every day is a new day. Every day is a new you, a new day, something like that. Since every day is a new day and is a new you, so therefore every day you have to daven, love that you should serve Hashem. That's the first statement that he has. He brings on with the Kirei Sefer from older Sefer. The pasuk says like this. The pasuk says in Shmois that Hashem, you should serve Hashem, and Hashem will bless your bread and your water. And it says that Hashem will bless your bread and water. So the Gemara in Bab Metzia, Kuf Zayin, the Gemara says that this refers to davening, and that this refers to Krishma and Tefilah, and therefore, just like, and the Gemara says over there, it's all Pasam Elchkis, and that's like the Pasam represents the bread and the water. So just like a person has to eat and drink every single day, therefore, the same thing would be that a person has to daven every single day. In other words, because the pasuk juxtaposes, you should serve Hashem with that Hashem will bless your bread and your water. So just like a person eats every single day, the same thing also a person should daven every single day. That would be the reason why, according to the Rambam, that a person has to daven every single day. Let's take this understanding of the Kirei Sefer and the Pri Chadash and say the same thing also would apply to the opinion that you have to daven Shacharis Mincha. Because generally, a person eats 2 meals a day. We find this in the idea of the man, that where there's Shalosh Sudas, where your person has to eat 3 meals, that's an extra meal, like on Shabbos. Or the Mishnah speaks about in Sukkah. The Mishnah says, that Vayetze says that a person has to eat 14 sudas in a sukkah once by day, one by night, which means twice a day. Agrifas asked Vayetze, what happens if I only eat 1 suda? The one says Chavzayim, but generally a person eats 2 meals a day. That's the idea. Mazon shtei sudas is a concept of the idea of 2 sudas. So you could say that the reason why we daven, and this will be the reason why it's Tefilah Maariv is on Rishus, that the reason why we daven twice a day, just like what the Rambam says, the reason why we daven once a day, is because it represents the time that a person eats, that a person is blessed through eating, just like eating a person does once a day. Therefore, you have to daven once a day. But on a deeper level, we can say, just like a person eats twice a day, the average meals of a person in the conception of Chazal and the Torah is Mazon Shtei Sudas, is meals twice a day, which is lachmecha, which is bread. Bread is a meal, so not just a snack, but a person eats twice a day. Just like the idea conceptually is the idea of eating twice a day. Therefore, the Chazal were koiveya as a choiva. Chazal established as a principle, as a choiv, as an obligation, that we have to daven twice a day, in the morning and the evening, or in the afternoon. And that's the reason for that's the oimik, that's the depth of the reason why Tfilas Arvis was only a reshus. Maariv was only a reshus. The reason why Maariv was a reshus is we're using the opinion of the Rambam to answer the Ramban. That the reason why Maariv is a reshus, I mean the Rambam also is a Maariv reshus, but the reason why Maariv is a reshus, to begin with, is not obligatory, it's not an obligation. A person has to daven Maariv, is because Chazal say that a person, according to Rabbanan, the Rabbanan established Tefilah. And Rabbanan established Tefilah, and they said, a person has to daven twice a day. A person has to daven every day. How many times a day why does a person have to daven a day? Because like eating. How much time does a person eat? Twice. So how much time does a person have to eat daven every single day? Twice. And there's also a reshus for a third, correspondingly for, let's say, a third meal. And if we say this, if we argue this argument, it becomes understood a little bit more why women were not makabel on themselves to daven Maariv. The reason why women were not makabel on themselves to daven Maariv, not specifically to women, but the reason, because the whole idea of Maariv is a reshus. Maariv is not an obligation, because Maariv represents an added meal. The reason why we daven every single day, like according to the Rambam, every single day, because it's like food. How many times do we eat a day? How many meals do we eat a day? Twice. So how many times does a person have to daven? Twice. And that would be the reason why it's only a reshus, even though we accept it as a chayv. And the reason why women never accept it as a chayv, because they go back to the original principle of what it was, the establishment of the davening as twice a day, representing the two meals that a person eats every day. This is a shtickle chiddush, this is a shtickle innovative understanding of davening, that the davening of the shachris and milcha, the twice that we daven every single day, is rooted in the pasuk of Archas Lachmacha, which Chazal also is Dorish Avad Shalakechem, which is Krishma, which is also the idea of Krishma, which Krishma is twice a day. At twice a day, Krishma, so therefore twice a day, similarly Tefilah, and the reason why Tefilah twice a day, similar to the idea of eating two Mazon Shtei Sudas, eating 2 meals a day. And that's why the Chatchila Chazal Keveya, as a chayv, the sages were established as an obligation to eat 2 meals a day and to daven twice a day. All right, shukach.